Hey there, this is Straight Talk, no sugar added. Life topics the way I see them. I'm your host, Nina Perez. I am here to challenge and transform your thinking. No excuses. Let's do this. Hey there, guys. Welcome back. This is Nina Perez. It is so nice to be here with you again. This is the new year of 2019, and we are kicking it off with wonderful things. So I was thinking about what I learned when I was writing my book. So I know a lot of you have heard me say this before, but those of you who are new to my podcast, my book is Hit Me With Your Best Shot, How I Overcame a Hard-Hitting Life. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere that books and e-readers are sold. And so I was thinking about what I've learned, writing this book. What are the things that I worked on? And I realized that there are 5 things that I really have learned about fighting back the enemy in my life and fighting back my life and taking it down when it hit me hard. And so there was 5 things that were pretty significant. And I want to break them apart into like a series because there's a lot I have to say about each one. So we're going to call this series 5 Tips I Learned to Fight Back the Enemy When It Hit Me Hard. And week 1, I want to start with overcoming shame, which is something I really had to fight against. And the second one is the power of forgiveness. Number 3 is standing in my truth. The 4th week will be letting go so that you can receive more. And 5, which is dreaming big. My book is about my life, and there is a lot of stuff in there. And when I started writing this book, I had a lot of shame that I had to overcome. And that's why I wanted to start this series off with overcoming shame. So what is shame anyway? I had to look it up. Everybody has their own definition of what shame is. And shame, according to the dictionary, is a painful feeling of humiliation or distress. So overcoming shame is overcoming a painful feeling of humiliation or distress. So I had to face a lot of shame so that I can write this book. And I have lived with shame most of my life. I mean, it started when my stepfather started molesting me at around the age of 6. And when I told my mother, she didn't believe me. And I always felt so embarrassed. I felt unloved. I felt unworthy. I felt ashamed because of it. And it took me many, many, many years to realize that I had nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, I think I'm just starting to peak at that, and I'm in my late 40s, right? So we can carry a lot of the shame for a very long time. And I'm just assuming that that's when my shame started because that was the most, vivid memory that I have. I mean, he was abusive physically as well. So when he would beat my tail, even when I was younger, I remember feeling hurt and a little embarrassed. But I don't think shame came in until the touching and feeling and stuff like that started. And then when I told my mother, she was in a pretty bad place too. I mean, he was abusive to her as well. And I think that she was broken. And so she told me to stop lying and, not say that. So that caused me to have this big amount of shame that, oh my gosh, maybe I'm doing something wrong. So one of the things that jumps right out at me from that definition of shame, let me remind you, is a painful feeling of humiliation or distress. So the one thing that jumped out at me when I read that was that it says that it's caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. That's part of the definition, right? So it's a painful feeling of humiliation and distress that is caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. And so it jumped out at me because I'm like, oh, okay. So there's 2 different types of shame, it seems like, right? So it's about feeling this wrong consciousness or this foolish behavior. But I never asked my stepfather to start touching me. So this clearly tells me that there is some shame that is justified, and some shame that isn't justified. So there are some situations where we can choose to do things, right? Where shame is exactly what we should feel. And there are some situations where we shouldn't feel shame, especially when someone has done something to us that you had no way of controlling. I had no way of controlling this adult from touching me as a child. I fought him off as much as I could, but he was really strong and he was the adult. I was not. And that, if I truly, believed in, right now, I walk in this faith, not right now, but I know that this is my life from here on out, where I have a strong belief in God. And I truly believe that God loves me and that I can't keep acting like a victim and allow these feelings of shame that I believe that the enemy uses this feeling to keep me from in bondage, right? From everything that God has to offer me. I know that I speak to some of my friends who are atheists or agnostics, and they say, the universe has for them. So if that's the terminology you want to use, you are free to do that. For me, it is God. And so I truly believe that God loves me. So I believe that I cannot keep walking around with this shame. I can't keep walking around feeling like a victim of what he did to me. Because if I do, I feel like that closes the door for all the beauty and things that God has to offer me, that he wants for me. So now, like I said, you may not believe in God. Once in a lifetime, I wasn't a true believer either. I will share with you that it is through God's love, though, and his sacrifice for me that I have learned to not be ashamed. I definitely walked in my lifetime not being a believer and definitely doubting. And I even got into Santeria, which a lot of you know, which is like praying to African saints and rituals and tarot card readings and spiritist and all that kind of stuff. I got into all of that for years. And it wasn't until I found God's love. And then I found out what he did for me, dying on the cross for me and dying because he loved me. That's when I learned that, why am I still carrying this shame? And let me tell you, it wasn't easy. I still had shame for many years. I've been walking with God now, I think I'm going to say about 18 years. And it wasn't until the last couple of years that I've started to really overcome this. So before I started in my walk, I went to therapists, I went to counselors, I went to my tarot card readings, I went to people who were psychics, I went to speak to spiritualists, people who speak to spirits, etc., to help me deal with a lot of this inner turmoil I was having, because I was having a lot of inner turmoil. I didn't like myself. I had anger issues. I had, every time somebody looked at me, I was trying to cover myself up. I didn't want anybody to look at me or see me, and although, some of these therapists and counselors and these tarot card readers and all that kind of stuff, they, I think that they tried. I personally didn't get freedom from this at all until I met Jesus. That's when I got the freedom that I have. When I started to read his word, when I realized how much he loves me and how much he wants for me and how he has plans for me, it just flipped the way I was thinking, and it helped me to overcome a lot of the battles that are within me. Some of these battles I had, which I talk to so many people who go through this, feeling angry and betrayed, having, negative thinking, this self-sabotaging behavior that I believe this year have overcome. I mean, this self-sabotaging behavior is really ridiculous. I say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I get about a month in, and then I'm like, I don't feel like doing that because, I don't want to. And then I would really mess up a long progress that I've gone through to become a better person. And it was like this self-sabotaging, almost like I didn't feel I was worth it. So I had to self-sabotage. And so this negative thinking about,
everything happens for a reason, I guess, and bad things happen, and this is my life. I'm broke. And I just went through all of this really bad behavior. I'm super short tempered, super short tempered. Like, I just like flip. You got me mad. Oh, I'm going in. I have a potty mouth, which believe me, I am still trying to get rid of, and I'm not doing very well sometimes, especially if you piss me off, right? So, I used to gossip, like, oh, she say, oh, she said that, oh my God. Well, let me tell I used to do that nastiness. I don't gossip anymore, but I used to. And this is just to name a few things of the turmoil I had inside of me. Now you're thinking, well, what does gossiping and short-tempered and negative thinking and self-sabotaging behavior and feeling angry have to do with, feeling ashamed? But you know what? I honestly believe that was the root of it. Because when my mom didn't believe me, I got angry. I was pissed. I felt betrayed. I had negative thinking. Well, if she doesn't believe me, who will? Right? Nobody loves me. Nobody cares about me. That's how I felt. And those things start to develop even as you become an adult. And after I, started to become a little bit older, I had a kid at 15 years old. Why? Because I was having sex at 13. I had nobody watching over me. My boyfriend was 17 years old. He totally knew what he was doing. I totally did not. I ended up having a kid. That man almost killed me. He used to beat me constantly. So the domestic violence was bad. And that brings shame. There's just so many things that come and compile on top of you. And you don't even realize it because we just move on, right? We keep doing life, but we're doing life broken, right? I wanted to make sure that no one took advantage of me anymore. So I made sure I built up a wall, a very harsh and very thick wall. The problem with walls is that when you build one, you're inside the wall and you can't reach the people outside that you want to. And the people that you're putting the wall up against can't reach you, especially the ones that love you. I was super harsh. For example, I was super harsh with my ex-husband. I was really tough on him. I would he was not getting over on me. No, you weren't. And I made sure he knew it, right? So I wore the pants. That's right. And even though he wasn't an honest person, nor was he faithful, okay, I found that out even more after I left, but he was definitely unfaithful to me and I knew it. And I was sure I was nasty. I was sure I was going to get him back, and I'm not excusing his behavior, but I know that I could have been a better person. So when he had his affair, what was my response? I'm going to go have one too. Because you will not be treating me that way. You won't get over on me. Again, why? Shame. I'm going to beat you because you are not going to beat me. I am not going to be ashamed. I'm not going to be embarrassed. That response of mine did not help me at all. You know what it did? It added more shame to my life because I didn't feel good about it. When I had the affair, I didn't feel good about it. I had a lot of work to do, guys. A lot of work. See, I think this kind of shame is necessary. The shame that I felt when I had the affair, that's necessary. Because I was ashamed of that behavior. I don't ever want to feel that way ever again. And I know that I will never have an affair on my husband that I have right now. He's amazing. And I know that I will never do that because it was so yucky. And that shame that came with doing that, that lived with me and I didn't like it. But having that anger and shame led me to be harsh with my husband and my current husband, my second husband. In the beginning of the years of our marriage, I was also very angry with him as well. All right, just an angry person. Anytime he did anything, I was like, "What? Who do you think you're talking to?" Here she comes. Here comes the tough girl. You will not put me down. You will not embarrass me. No way, Jose. Right? Now, transformation, I will tell you, from overcoming all of this behavior, it wasn't easy. Okay? It wasn't easy. In fact, I still have to check myself and my way of thinking. But it sure is worth it to me. It is worth it to me. I'm not saying that you can't get help from a counselor or a therapist. I think that there's definitely a good place for that, for sure. Absolutely. This is just my own experience. I'm talking to you about my experience. The counselors and the therapists didn't help me as much as I needed the help. I needed some deep inner help. And the only one that was able to help me with that was God. So I didn't get any help at all from the tarot card readings and psychics and all that. They are a terrible resource for you to get help from. Please don't go down that road. Please don't go down that road. That causes confusion. It causes turmoil. It causes you to question everything. It causes you to not know what's the truth and what's a lie. And if they pull out a little truth, or they could read you really well, and here you are following this, it's just BS. Okay, so stay away from that. I will not tell you to stay away from counselors and therapy, because I believe that they can be very, very helpful. Now, I truly believe that there is such a thing as healthy shame. So, like I explained, I know that sounds contradictory to some people, but the way I want to explain it is that I believe that it is healthy to be ashamed if you do something that you know is wrong and you shouldn't be doing it. A person that has no shame at all after doing something wrong, that to me is a dangerous person. That's in my opinion. A person who has no shame after doing something wrong is a dangerous person. Because if you steal from someone and you have no shame about it, what's to stop you from stealing again? Nothing. I mean, that's a small example, but I believe that it is the feeling of shame in those kind of circumstances that will save you and save me from further destruction. So how did I overcome shame? There was a lot of ways I did that. I faced the truth. I looked at it and said, okay, was this my truth? When my stepfather started molesting me, did I request that to happen? Did I have that happen? Was that my fault? The answer is no. So I was able to lay that on the floor and say, you know what, God, this does not belong to me. I will not be ashamed of this anymore. When I started going through my life story in the book and started going to the domestic violence, is the abuse and all of that he did to me, was that my fault? Not for his part of it, but definitely for me staying as long as I did, knowing that behavior wasn't going to get any better. So I had to put down my stuff and say, you know what, I'm ashamed of my behavior. I will never do that again in any more relationships. But I'm not ashamed of what he did to me, because he did to me because he wanted to do that to me, to the point where he almost killed me. That I am not ashamed of. And as my life kept going, am I ashamed of having my affair on my ex-husband? Yes. And I will never do that again. I have overcome that shame. What he did to me, but having his affair, that I am not ashamed of, because I didn't do that. I didn't make him do that. I don't own that. That is not me. I am not ashamed of that. So what I've discovered in this and overcoming shame for me really comes down to facing that demon, facing all of those truth and lies, and kind of pulling them apart, if you will, and saying, these are the truths, these are the lies, and which ones should I be ashamed of and which ones should I not be? And the ones I was ashamed of, and I say was because I don't carry shame with me. I don't carry shame with me. Now, shame does want to be your friend and be in your back pocket. So every time somebody says something that triggers something in you, you can go, oh, wait, let me pull out shame because that's what I feel right now. I'm not having that. I will tell you, I mean, my life story is out there. I can't even deny it. Right? Everything is out there. My whole life story is out there. And it is a pretty hard read in that it's a very emotional and a lot of roller coasters and a lot of things have happened to me. But I am not ashamed of it. Why? Because I've overcome it. I've overcome it personally through prayer, to speaking my truth, standing in my truth, living in forgiveness for people and for myself, letting go of things so that I can receive more, and just like really putting myself out there and like saying, this is who I am, dude. This is who I am. You can't shame me because it's out there. I put it out there, right? So overcoming shame and standing in that truth, being who you are, knowing that you don't have to own other people's crap. Just because they did something to you does not mean that it is your fault, and it definitely doesn't mean that it is your shame to carry. Let them be ashamed of that. That is not yours. Now, I want you to also be healthy and have a healthy shame. When you're doing something that you know is wrong, you should feel shame about that, and you should change that behavior immediately so that you can open up access to the beautiful things in life. That, my friends, is week 1 of this series, Overcoming Shame. And that's how I overcome it. I want to know your feedback. I want to know what you think. I want to know if this is helpful to you. And next week when I come on, we will talk about the power of forgiveness, because, man, it is powerful. It will transform your life. It will change your thinking seriously. And I'm sorry that my voice sounds the way it does. I am in a couple of days into my bronchitis, but I wanted to make sure that this was out for Friday because I know that a lot of you listen and you want to hear what I have to say. And I'm grateful to you more than you will ever know. So thank you so much for listening. This is Nina Perez at Straight Talk, No Sugar Added.